With teams clawing to stay in the Premier League, the relegation battle will be more competitive than ever, given that only 6 points are separating the bottom 7 clubs. The fight to stay in the Premier League is as intense a struggle as the race to finish in the top 4 to earn a Champions League spot next season. The point differential between teams in the middle of the table and those in the relegation zone is decreasing, which makes the struggle more thrilling for spectators. To stay in the Premier League, Bournemouth, Everton and Southampton will need to put in more effort and show more grit now that we've begun the back half of the season. Last season, Everton and Southampton both came dangerously close to being relegated, though both were able to survive. The battle has become more interesting as a result of managerial changes in the relegation sides. Who will remain in the Premier League this season and which teams will be demoted as the relegation battle heats up? Follow along to see which clubs are most likely to prevail and which will fail. Only one of the newly promoted teams from the previous season was able to retain their place in the Premier League, as Brentford easily escaped a relegation battle. At the bottom of the table, Burnley, Watford and Norwich all suffered the shame of being relegated. This season, the situation is somewhat similar because Bournemouth is having trouble and Forest is still very much in danger. Fulham, meanwhile, is secure in its current position. With 4 of their next 6 games against teams battling for relegation, including an away game at AFC Bournemouth, Forest is in a particularly crucial stretch. When the Premier League resumed on Boxing Day, Forest was in the relegation zone, while Bournemouth was in 14th place and had hired Gary O'Neill as their permanent manager as a result of their successful play. Since then, the two sides have been moving in opposing directions. Bournemouth has lost 4 of its past 5 games since the Premier League returned, while Forest has won 3 of its last 5 games and moved up to 13th place in the table. However, Bournemouth won the reverse fixture between the sides, coming from 2-0 down to win the game 3-2 in September. Just 4 games into the new campaign, Bournemouth made the crucial decision to fire Scott Parker. The Cherries had defeated Aston Villa before suffering losses to Manchester City, Arsenal and Liverpool. The 9-0 hammering by Liverpool proved to be the turning point, but more so because of Parker's post-game comments, in which he seemed to criticise the board and their lack of support. That put Bournemouth in the difficult position of having to turn things around while also looking for a new manager. They performed decently well, drawing with Wolves and Newcastle before a decisive win over Nottingham Forest. With draws against Brentford and Fulham on either side of a victory against Leicester, the Cherries stretched their unbeaten run to 6 games. But all good things must come to an end. Making Gary O'Neill their permanent manager, Bournemouth are now 19th in the Premier League after losing 8 of their previous 11 games. That being said, they are 1 point from safety, and if the new manager can provide a morale boost to his side, they could find their way up the table. On their best days, the Saints can be stunning, with smooth passing and execution that does not align with their placement in the standings. However, other times their weaknesses are exposed due to a lack of cutting edge in the final third and a soft back line. On match day 1, the Saints travelled to Tottenham and were soundly defeated 4-1. However, they managed to earn 4 points in their following 2 matches with a tie against Leeds and a 2-1 win over Leicester, before losing 1-0 to Man United at home. Southampton had a chance to turn things around after beating Chelsea, but they then suffered 4 straight losses against Wolves, Aston Villa, Everton and Man City. After ending that streak with a draw against West Ham, they built on it by drawing Arsenal and defeating Bournemouth 1-0. However, they then lost 1-0 at Crystal Palace, and then 4-1 at home to Newcastle, causing them to drop to 18th in the table. At the beginning of 2023, Southampton was at the bottom of the table after 2 losses to Brighton and Fulham following the World Cup, making it difficult for new manager Nathan Jones to succeed at such a young age in the Premier League. The scope of the challenge has been revealed by a recent 3-0 loss to Brentford. They're currently bottom of the table with a dismal 15 points from 22 games, making it all but certain that the Saints are destined for relegation, unless some sort of miracle can see them ascend from the danger zone. After spending so much time away from the Premier League, recently promoted Nottingham Forest supporters will be pleased to see their team once again competing against the big clubs in England. However, if Steve Cooper's experience has taught us anything, it's that he won't be someone who just wants to fill seats in the top tier. As a forward-thinking manager who worked miracles to elevate Forest from the champions' bottom to the elite of the Premier League, he will want to make a splash this season. But it doesn't guarantee they will avoid the relegation zone. Forest are now in 14th place after 22 games, 6 points above the danger zone, with just 2 losses in their last 11 games, both against Manchester United and Arsenal. the team has started to find its form. Everton had a tremendous escape from the relegation fight last season, and fans were hopeful that Frank Lampard might lead them out of it in 2022 to 2023. However, Lampard was removed from his duties following a loss to West Ham just before the FA Cup weekend. Sean Dyche has been brought in to replace Lampard and drive the team up towards the middle of the table. Fans will be hoping the former Burnley manager can provide some stability and peace to a club in rough waters, despite his far from spectacular appointment. And that's exactly what happened in Dyche's debut match, as the seasoned manager defeated league leaders Arsenal 1-0 to raise some optimism for the team's season. However, with the fans at the necks of the board members, Everton are facing struggles both on and off the pitch. It doesn't seem that long ago that Wolves were vying for a spot in European football, but the club is now struggling at the wrong end of the table. Furthermore, Bruno Lage was fired following a loss to West Ham at the start of October, capping a run of just one victory over 15 Premier League games. Wolves' lone victory came against Southampton in their opening contest of the month of September, but they then suffered scoreless losses to Man City, West Ham and Chelsea. They did escape the relegation zone in October by defeating Nottingham Forest 1-0 to earn their second victory of the campaign, but they have since fallen back. After the World Cup, they began a new Julen Lopetegui era, and they thrillingly overcame Everton to get things off to the greatest possible start. Since then, Wolves have defeated West Ham 1-0 to exit the relegation zone, and they just dispatched Liverpool 3-0 to complete the sweep. West Ham United, a respectable club that just last season competed for the top 4 positions, is currently ranked 16th in the Premier League and just above the relegation zone. This season, David Moyes' team has not quite found the best combination, and their dreadful performance has continued. The predicament at the club is worse than ever, with their best player Declan Rice on the verge of departing for a Champions League club. In the upcoming months, they still have matches against the Premier League Big Six, and their place in the league appears to be in grave danger. The fact that they advanced to the FA Cup 5th round, where they will play a formidable Man United team, is some of the only good the fans can look forward to in the near future. Jesse Marsch's first few months at Leeds were filled with success, but the American quickly discovered how difficult life can be in the Premier League. As a result, he has since fallen victim to the ruthless Premier League chopping block and was recently sacked. Leeds demonstrated that they still had life in them during a midweek match against Manchester United, drawing 2-2 and laying the basis for the next head coach to build on that outstanding performance. However, when they faced Man U for the second time in a 5-day span, the levels of the league were shown, as Leeds were defeated 2-0 and left in 17th place, just above the relegation zone. The relegation fight this season appears to be more competitive than ever due to the small point differential between the bottom teams. The battle between the clubs at the bottom half of the table will get more exciting as the season goes on, as only 10 points separate 11th from 20th. Fans of the teams in the relegation zone will find the battle stressful and infuriating, as their side fails to collect points in each game, although neutral fans find it to be entertaining. The teams that will be relegated to the Championship will have to wait a year to return to the Premier League, and that's only if they do well enough to earn a spot in the Premier League. Watford is struggling in the Championship after being demoted last season, so there's no guarantee of a speedy return to top-flight football for any club. Their likelihood of moving up to the Premier League is dwindling. To avoid dropping out of the Premier League, the teams in the relegation zone will need to work harder internally, while praying for the clubs above them to drop points each match week. Despite their poor start to the season, Nottingham Forest may be able to stay in the Premier League because of their heavy lifting during the transfer window to bolster their team. As the season edges closer to the final match week, the relegation battle will continue to build with excitement and anticipation as clubs do everything in their power to resist the drop.